Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about True Lies, Season 1, Episode 6. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I thought it was so interesting because I thought the opening of the episode would be major setup for the episode. Like, oh, this is something 2 years ago that's having an effect now. It's like, no, it was just pure setup for Harry's lucky knife situation. I thought that was so interesting that we're getting all that cold opening setup just for the knife situation. But it obviously it plays into the larger theme of the episode where Harry's having to adjust how he's had to do things for the past 17 years. He's been kind of like his own, he's like the superstar when it comes to the spy stuff, but now Helen is kind of getting mixed up in that, kind of organizing stuff. It's like, yeah, your knife isn't allowed to be with your firearms. That's how the regulations go. She's kind of like, especially because she's studying the handbook and stuff, because I'm sure Harry's kind of going moved away from all that after all these years, because it's like, right, I've kind of formulated my own style and my own way of doing things, and it's kind of worked out for me. Not kind of, it pretty much has worked out for me all the time. So he doesn't like things changing, and he likes things a certain way, but Helen's kind of been reorganizing stuff and ended up losing his lucky knife. And now it's also like, oh, I'm trying to get this very specific drink that I'm always getting. It's like, nope. Oh, I'm going to order like the beef ribs or whatever. Nope. I've seen your cholesterol levels recently, and it's just like he even tried to get Gibbs to talk to her. It's like, I can't talk to my wife about things. It's like, yeah, I know it's kind of me. I'm the one that kind of revealed everything and kind of brought her into the fold, but still, like, it's a new adjustment that he's still, they're still in the figuring out stuff process. So he hasn't outright told Helen how much of an issue he has with it, but that is what a marriage is supposed to be. A marriage is about compromise and communication, the big C's. I'm sure there's a third C that you could, come up with, but those are two pretty major keys. Two major C's in that conversation. But I love that this episode revolved around kind of like their cover is the company that Omega Sector uses as a cover is basically having like a once a year, all the spy groups end up coming together so they can exchange information with other agencies, as well as talk about some of the bad guys they're dealing with. It's like, right, if we showed up at like some resort or whatever, if we made it like a full-blown vacation, like kind of went a little too ritzy, like it would draw too much attention, but making it seem like it's kind of a convention almost type of thing, like making it like an official thing that they're doing, it makes it less suspicious. So, and I love everyone's got their own, like Maria's kind of like the party person. Luther is always kind of awarded the top salesperson because he really dives into he really leans into the cover of it all because he really enjoys it, whereas everyone else kind of makes fun of him because of how super into it he is. But he's like, yeah, like, it's not just a cover, because he's actually pretty tight with some of the other workers at their job, but it's like, no, it's just a cover, we don't have to really do all that. Was not expecting that situation to turn into what it did. It's basically like, hey, we got to keep all these other people we work with in the dark about what's going on, because a spy hunter shows up. His name Jan or whatever. And he hunts spies. Hell, they were talking about a situation where he basically killed a whole bunch of people just for the sake of finding one undercover agent or whatever. It's like, this guy's pretty villainous. And it's like, yeah, Harry and Helen had the kids with them too. So, I mean, they lied about going to do some ATV things, but in fact, like, Dana and Jake went off to like some bars to get drinks, but their fake IDs didn't stand up to inspections, and so for the past 3 bars they weren't able to get any alcohol, so that kind of blew up in their faces. So later on, Luther's in charge of dealing with them, which he's like, I have no experience dealing with kids, so he was trying to play the role of kind of like the cool, like, sort of uncle. That conversation to get him and Maria ended up having, like, was that last episode or episode before last? That might have been last episode. I don't remember now. But either way, when it's all said and done, I love that. It's like, oh yeah, let's go. Let's do a taco crawl. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I found you guys here by accident. What are you guys doing here? This is wild. And then like, it's like, oh wait, is that someone chasing out there? Is that someone with a gun? It's like, oh, it must be the police after us. It's like, what? The police are coming after us because the bar called them over some fake IDs. And Jake's like, yes. And so obviously Dana's like, something's up here, because like Luther's like, yeah, I get it, I'm kind of like the loser who's super into work, but don't worry, like, come on, we're gonna run from the cops. And you're like, wait, what? It's like, just stop. It's like, no, come on, you didn't think, oh, you think I wasn't cool enough to run from the cops? I got experience with this. And ended up getting away from the people. Obviously it's like, oh, these are very bad people that were hunting down anyone in the general area of that facility, just because it's like, oh, looking for, anyone that's Omega sector related, because they ended up going after the Mexican delegation of like, spies that were there, ended up like going after them. They had to run and burn a lot of stuff, but they didn't have enough time when getting out, so that's how Wanted and found out about the Omega sector being there as well. So that's what put them in his crosshairs. But yeah, I'm curious, is it really just going to be like, oh yeah, like Uncle Luther was kind of crazy and was driving away from police? I'm like, are we really just going to like chalk that up as that? Like, there's no way you're just going to be like, yeah. But that's why I feel like out of anyone, Dana is the one that's going to question things the most, because it already felt like they were setting that up maybe like episode 1. With everything, but we never really dived into it, where it seemed like Dana was the most suspicious and Jake was kind of suspicious, but it feels like Dana is going to be the one who potentially leads the charge on finding out about their parents. I think she's going to be the one to eventually kind of add up. It's like, yeah, there's just, things have been weird lately, like that, because it was easier to keep that cover when it was just Harry, but now it's like Harry and Helen, and just now it's also Maria and Gib and Luther. Like, maybe there's things that that Dana didn't pay as much attention to before, but with things being weird as they are now in retrospect, in hindsight, a lot of those things are kind of clicking, like, those were weird too. So, like I said, I think she's going to be the one who ultimately ends up, at least start picking that stuff apart, and maybe it's going to be an episode where Helen and Harry are really going to have to double down to keep stuff from her, and then maybe she'll walk away from the episode being like, oh yeah, I was reading into things too much. I don't know what I was really expecting. It could be something like that, where they kind of have to double down on the lies type of situation. I don't know, just throwing it out there as kind of like an interesting possibility, because I'm just like, there's no way you're just going to legit, like, this Luther thing was just too wild, and it's like, even if you took it at face value, it's like, wait, we got away from the cops, are we really just going, and we went back to like party and there was no repercussions for that? Like, Dana's going, this could definitely be something that gets brought up. It feels like it's primed to be brought up, but we'll see. Especially because, like, later on, Helen's hugging her after everything. But like, oh yeah, parents, I missed you when you were doing your ATV thing or whatever. And it's like, oh, so did Luther not tell you that but they, it's like, oh, Luther doesn't know we were here at a bar trying to drink. But then again, Jake did bring it up in front of, him being like, oh, that's why the cops are after us. He brought that up in front of Luther, so it's like he does know. So maybe they're like, hey, maybe he's trying to be the cool uncle and not say anything. But I like I said, I think this sets up some questions from Dana's perspective. But once again, we'll ultimately have to wait and see. I also like that we set up the whole, because Gib is talking about the fact that Harry's got his whole relationship thing. It's like, right, your personal life and your professional life bleeding over together. He's like, I don't have that worry. But then it kind of happens this episode with Eva, is it Eva or Ava? I'm going with Eva, who's like super into Gib and just being like, oh yeah, I did this thing for you, so you have a lot of free time. You want to hit the dance floor? And then later on, he's like, oh my God, you're so amazing. I could kiss Harry, Helen, what are you up to? It's like, it's super obvious he was starting to like her too, and he was just kind of nervous. But I really like that. It's like, it's like, and she admired, like, because Eva's like, oh yeah, like Harry and Helen, it's like, oh, they were married before they start working. He's like, yeah, I won't be in that situation because they're practically about to kill each other. She's like, oh no, but it's kind of nice, having someone with you who kind of understands you and kind of like works to kind of cover your back in that regard. So, and ultimately they do dance together. So hopefully we get to see more of that. That ends up becoming something that becomes, well, maybe something. Or maybe Gib is trying to figure out, like, okay, like, we took those steps forward, but maybe he hasn't contacted her and he kind of left her, like, on red, unread or whatever. So it's like, So maybe it's just a situation of he kind of accidentally ghosted her because he just doesn't know how to handle the situation. I could definitely see Gibb going in that direction, not wanting to bleed both sides of things. Once again, the difference is you're bringing Helen in as like and once again, like even implying like, Luther and Maria met through the job. So, I mean, it can work without it. I mean, it has its complications, but I'm sure like, once again, that Helen situation of someone from the outside coming in, it probably will be like it's a little more awkward and complicated in that regard. But diving into it, Juan the guy is adamant about going after getting one of the Omega spies, Omega Sector spies. So was it Sound and Fury? So the plan is to gather up all the explosives that are in the hotel or whatever, which from a perspective of like, I mean, that makes sense to have those as kind of like contingencies in case they ever have to basically burn and run, like have to burn this all to the ground so no one finds any files or anything related to Omega Sector and just disappear. They gathered all the explosives, and the point was to make them seem like they were a lot more well armed than they were. Instead of being the select few people that they are, make it seem like we've got an army behind us to scare off his people because they are outmatched, outgunned, and outnumbered. And I love Helen being like, no, you're not going to go this alone. I love that she kept handing him stuff. He's like, no, honey, I don't need that. Because he was trying to be he's like, no, honey, thank you anyway. I don't need that. He could have easily snapped on her, but he didn't because he's like, right, he's trying to be understanding. She doesn't want him going out there alone. She's worried about him. In fact, she's going with him. And he's like, honey, I have a way of doing things. She's like, yes, but we're in this together. Don't cut me out. I'm going with you. It's like, right, it will help to have everything organized because you've got the detonators and the explosives all mixed up. And he's like, well, fine, might help to have someone organize the detonators. So, but they do make a good team. And I think that ends up being kind of the ultimate, like the beginning, like making everything kind of come full circle of the beginning of like, hey, my lucky knife's missing. Helen did hook him up with the taser pen, which ended up being very useful in the end. But I think the point is he doesn't need the lucky knife anymore because he has Helen. Like, lucky knife was nice because you were working alone. Now that dynamic has changed. Obviously, once again, it's an adjustment period. There's some good, there's some bad. But it's about the fact is Helen is your lucky knife that when you're in trouble, you have Helen there to kind of back you up and have your back, Rather than kind of handling an explosive situation on his own, it's like, right, they were able to kind of handle that like a two-pronged situation. He's handling one side of things, she's handling another, and they ended up ultimately taking down, I kept saying Juan, it's Johan. I don't know why I kept it, because I was like, right, because he's Danish, right? So it's Johan, I believe. I kept saying Juan, I don't know why. I kept seeing the name Johan in my head, but for whatever reason, I kept saying Juan. Do forgive me, so... It is also sad to find out she didn't necessarily like 100% lose it. I don't know whether she was covering the entire time not knowing, like, oh, did I actually not know? I thought the knife was here. Like, was she covering the entire time, just hesitant to tell him about? Because maybe she always knew that it was his lucky knife. Because even the kids knew about the knife thing. Because it's like, oh, because he was trying to make cocoa earlier for the kids, and it's like, oh, where's your knife? He's like, yeah, your mom. Ask your mom. She kind of lost it. But it's like maybe Helen knew the entire time where the knife was, but it wasn't until like, okay, after thinking of, I think I can finally admit, yeah, I accidentally gave it away to Goodwill, but it all worked out in the end, so he doesn't need the knife anymore, so... It was just kind of a nice, sweet ending to the episode. Everything's resolved, and they're all kind of dancing. I actually kind of completely skipped over Maria's side of things, which she's basically having to keep all the salespeople busy because she's always been like the party person, and like Luther kind of kicks it with the salespeople, but she thought like, oh yeah, they're kind of... they're not fun to be around. Once again, she's the partier. Luther is kind of like, this is his people. So Maria doesn't really know them that well. So she had to convince them to go on a hike, told one of the ladies to hold back her pee. And it's like, right, we just have to keep going. This is about togetherness. And, corporate's all about this. It's like, come on. She has to kind of babysit in this regard. And it just kind of, this is out of her wheelhouse dealing with like the salespeople. And ultimately she shows up later. She's like, yeah, I had to find the bush. And she's like, sorry, apologizing to the lady she made hold her pee the entire time. And it's like, I fell and hit a rock. They're like, yeah, but it's okay. You're okay and you're safe. And Maria's like, Yeah, not like I was back there making sure the two people following us weren't going to show up and take you guys hostage or try and kill you, but okay. It's like, obviously they're not in the know, but I think it was sweet. And it's like, Brad's like, yeah, I thought you weren't one of us, but I see that, in fact, you are one of us. Luther, make sure you tell her that. And it's like, okay, Brad, you go off, enjoy your drink, Brad. I do love Brad. He's like, oh, this is my jam. I'm about to. It's like, oh, Brad's not, and also Brad's not really good at dancing. But it's like, yeah, both of them had kind of switched roles. He had to be kind of like the partier with Jake and Dana. That didn't work out. She kind of had to kick it with the salespeople, which she's like, I have a better appreciation for them, because it's like, at the end of the day, they were worried about you. So it's like, it's kind of that thing of, there is kind of a nice camaraderie that comes with the salespeople. So like I said, overall, like, everything ended up ending nicely, and everyone was dancing together and having fun. So we're able to kind of enjoy the vacation, salvage kind of the vacation element to all of this. So I'm very interested to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.